Why was the room laughing when she was the only one who saw it? The countdown clock glared above the command floor, red numbers pulsing like a wound. Conversations buzzed, too loud, too careless. A lieutenant cracked a joke, and a ripple of laughter broke across the consoles, spilling over the hum of fans and the clink of coffee cups. No one seemed to notice the stutter on her screen. Did. She sat at the guidance console, hands steady over the keys, sleeves rolled above her elbows. Dust from the desert still clung to her boots, and a smudge of thermal paste marked her cheek like war paint she hadn't meant to wear. To the rest of the room, she was a test technician. Disposable. Background. To herself, she was a sentinel watching numbers like a lifeline. The missile outside waited under the noonday heat, a white column against the flat sky, shimmering like a mirage. A weapon dressed up as a sculpture, beautiful if you didn't know what beauty could destroy. On her panel, the green lanes told the story everyone wanted to believe. Nominal, steady, safe. But between those lines, in the hidden rhythm of packets and rates, she saw a flaw. A flicker, a breath where there shouldn't be one. It would be easy to dismiss it. Easy to let the machine's arrogance speak louder than her intuition, but her pulse betrayed her. She ran the stream again, slower this time, listening as much as looking. There it was, the micro stutter in the inertial loop, so faint that it slipped beneath the built-in thresholds, too small for green bars to blink, but knew the truth. Over flight time, small ghosts grew teeth. She exhaled, long and steady, but her throat stayed tight. "Hey, technician," the lieutenant called over his shoulder, grinning as if he'd said something clever. "Don't touch anything unless someone with rank tells you to." The other officers smirked. One captain angled his phone just low enough to pretend he wasn't recording, but the red dot gleamed like an insect eye. They wanted footage, a stumble, a joke at her expense. She ignored them. Instead, she feathered the diagnostic keys, peeling back filters until the raw numbers spilled across her screen, like listening to static for the one note out of place. There it was again. Not random, a rhythm, a flaw waiting to multiply. The countdown ticked to T20. The air in the room shifted. Louder voices fell to low murmurs, the nervous silence of people pretending to be confident. The test director, a major with sunburned ears and the impatience of someone who trusted the schedule more than the sky, paced between rows, calling times like a metronome. Pad is green, winds inside envelope, guidance confirm final align. Keyed the alignment, her voice quiet. The system responded with mechanical certainty, nominal. She didn't believe it. She pressed again, forcing the machine into a diagnostic roll. The numbers sang back to her, and again the stutter. A child tripping on the same step every few hundred frames. Someone had altered the filter overnight, squeezing the tuning. On a perfect sensor, that would look like improvement, but deserts weren't perfect. Heat, vibration, chaos, they punished arrogance. Her jaw set, she lifted the comm. Request hold for anomaly review. Every head within 10 feet snapped toward her, as if she had spoken in a foreign language. The lieutenant barked a short laugh. "Anomaly, you mean nerves." The captain's phone tilted higher. The major pinched the bridge of his nose. "Define anomaly." She spoke with care, her voice even but firm. "Intermittent phase lag in the inertial loop, too small for thresholds. Under vibration, it could accumulate." And the impact. His tone wasn't curiosity. It was dismissal rehearsed as duty. She swallowed the dryness in her throat. Guidance could believe the vehicle is more upright than it is. Corrections amplify phantom errors. Drift accelerates. With this profile, error could grow before arc completion. The laughter returned, softer this time. "How fast?" the major asked. She didn't blink, fast enough to matter. Silence for one heartbeat. Then the major glanced at the timeline, already bleeding seconds. He touched his headset. "Range, hold your questions, proceed." Her request was dead. The room carried on, keys clicked, checklists ticked forward. Felt the press of humiliation. a cold flush at the base of her neck. She'd been here before. Rooms where warnings were ignored because her voice didn't fit the hierarchy. And she remembered where that had led. To nights haunted by reports of failures, by images of fire where there should have been sky. She didn't speak again, she acted. Her fingers called up an old console, one most of the room had never touched. Black text on white. The language of machines before the gloss of GUIs. She laid raw gyro frames against the axle stream, let the jitter play out in its true shape. The skid was there. Sly, patient, waiting. "Ma'am," a security NCO at the door said softly. His voice was courteous but carried warning. "Hands off control surfaces until director calls your station." She nodded but didn't look up. Her hands weren't on the controls, not yet. Instead, she opened the pad vibration feed, injected a pulse. A cheap substitute for a shaker test. Not procedure, not proper, but enough. The trace spiked, damped, rang once. And then the inertial loop tripped. A hiccup small as a breath, but to her it screamed. Her pulse spiked. "Director, anomaly confirmed under vibration. Request 1 minute for damped alignment." T17. The major's eyes didn't lift from the schedule, not rewriting filters at T18. "Sir," she said, and the single word carried the memory of every time she had been told to stay in her lane, and the last time she had obeyed. "If we light with that tuning, you're betting the desert is kinder than math." The lieutenant muttered, "Drama." The captain's lens tilted higher, red dot glowing. Out on the pad, the gantry arms crawled back, leaving the missile's skin gleaming under the desert sun. A sculpture of fire waiting to happen. Heat shimmered across the glass wall, distorting it into a mirage. Telemetry chimed, GPS locked, star tracker ready. His throat tightened. She opened her dog-eared manual, a page worn by coffee stains. A line underlined months ago. When the instrument believes the world more than the world deserves, humility must belong to the operator. Her hand hovered over the emergency menu, the one she wasn't authorized to touch. The countdown struck T10. The room leaned forward, the major paced. Voices recited final checks like a litany. Weather green, pad green, safety green. "Guidance recorded," said evenly. "Anomaly remains, mitigation ready if ordered." "It won't be ordered," the lieutenant whispered, loud enough for her. A dust devil danced across the tarmac outside, then vanished. A raven cut a line across the sky. The room felt smaller. The missile looked thinner, more dangerous in its fragility. The private who had been running cables earlier drifted near her station, head down, voice low. "Ma'am, if you need a relay pulled." She shook her head once, "Not yet." The guards shifted at the doorway, hands near gloves, ready to move her if told. The NCO's eyes met hers, steady, not unkind. T2, the room held its breath. His hand hovered above the unauthorized menu. The stutter on her screen whispered again, mocking. "Just in case," she whispered to no one, to the math, to the ghosts. "Ignition." The floor trembled, a bass note swelling through ribs and teeth. Fire clawed across the desert floor, swallowing shadows. The missile leapt skyward in a blinding column of smoke and light. Applause tried to start, died in a throat. Eyes snapped to screens. Green dots marched along predicted paths. "Nominal," the director announced. "Nominal confirmed." Relief spread, shoulders sagged, someone chuckled nervously. But's panel betrayed a different story. Her breath caught. The arc was bending, not wildly, not obviously, but enough. Grain by grain, the drift accumulated. The whisper of disaster, invisible to those who saw only summaries. She stared at the numbers. Her heart beat faster than the clock. The missile was leaving safe sky, and she was the only one who saw it. Why did her screen still betray danger when the room had already declared victory? Green lanes glowed like a smile painted across glass, and voices lifted in relief. The missile was on course, at least on the summary screens. But's raw feed told a different story. Numbers slipped grain by grain, a drift too faint for their applause to notice. She whispered calculations under her breath, each one slicing her hope thinner. Her hand reached for the comm, but a firm grip landed on her shoulder. The security NCO. His voice was low, almost apologetic. Orders from above. They want you away from the board. They'll lose control, she said, not turning from the numbers. Ma'am, his tone carried weight. I'm just the messenger. Two more guards stepped forward, boots squeaking on the polished tile. Their presence was heavy, unnecessary. The lieutenant grinned from across the room, savoring the spectacle. The captain lifted his phone higher, the red recording dot capturing every twitch of her fingers. They tugged at her chair. She resisted, one hand slamming against the console edge. Trajectory deviating, she snapped. Correction window still open. The major turned toward her, irritation breaking through his forced calm. Engineer, you're out of line. Telemetry shows nominal. Spun her monitor outward, exposing raw graphs, lines etched with jagged tremors. Not summaries, raw data, look. A ripple of unease passed through nearby operators. Their eyes darted from her screen to their own. Some saw it, the faint sore teeth along the curve. A young analyst swallowed hard, uncertain. The major waved his hand. We proceed, stand down. The guards pulled harder. Her chair screeched across the floor. Fingers dug into the console lip, heat painting her face in ghostly green. Through the glass wall, the missile shrank as it clawed higher, plume gilded by sunlight. To most, it was beauty. To her, it was omen. Her chest tightened, lungs burning. She didn't need a calculator. The numbers were muscle memory, rehearsed through endless simulations. And they sang the same discord. She would not let silence write disaster again. Her palms slammed against the keyboard. Overrides blinked across her console. Alarms chirped, shrill and accusing. What are you doing? The lieutenant barked. She's tampering, the captain shouted, phone shaking with glee. Correction vector, answered, voice sharp but steady. Fingers blurred, keystrokes a plea to physics. The radar display twitched. A ghost line traced beside the green corridor. For 3 breaths, chaos ruled. Shouts from every corner, guards reaching. The director demanding lockdown. And then the ghost line bent closer, closer still. Merged. Deviation narrowing. The room stilled. The storm she'd summoned folded into calm. Sagged in her chair, sweat prickling down her back. Relief was not joy, it was exhaustion. The private who had offered help earlier hissed under his breath. She fixed it. Not everyone looked relieved. The major's jaw tightened, a man torn between gratitude and fury. He lifted his headset. Range, confirm correction. A pause, then, confirmed, trajectory within parameters. Relief exhaled across the room. Operators slumped back, shoulders softening, but not the director. His face hardened. Escort her out. She acts again without authorization, she doesn't act at all. Brushed damp hair from her forehead, eyes meeting his. Authorization won't stop gravity. The guard stepped closer. This time even the NCO didn't intervene. Hands closed around her arms. Murmurs rippled through the room, awe tangled with judgment. And then silence fell, heavy and sharp. Slow, deliberate. Colonel Briggs entered. He moved with the weight of a man used to commanding gravity itself. Tall frame, eyes carved from iron. He said nothing at first, just stood at the edge of the console glow, absorbing the chaos that had preceded him. Operators straightened instinctively, as if his presence alone demanded discipline. Then his gaze fell on her. Felt it before she saw it, the weight of recognition pressing against her collarbone. She turned just slightly, and the edge of her uniform shifted. Steel caught the light. A badge small and sharp, glinting for a heartbeat. Conversation stopped mid-word. Fingers froze above keyboards. Even the hum of servers seemed to falter. Colonel Briggs's lips parted. His voice, when it came, carried disbelief threaded with something older. That badge, it shouldn't exist. The lieutenant's smirk collapsed. The captain lowered his phone, every gaze anchored to the steel at her collar. His heart thundered. She raised her chin, not in defiance but in resignation. The insignia had slipped free for less than a second, but its weight crushed the room heavier than the roar of rockets. The colonel stepped closer, boots deliberate against tile. His shadow stretched across her console, swallowing the green glow. "Who issued you that badge?" His voice was low, sharp. She pressed her lips together. Silence was safer than any lie. The director cleared his throat, desperate to reclaim authority. "Colonel, with respect, the test vehicle is still in flight. Perhaps this discussion—" "Quiet." Briggs's tone cut like a blade. His eyes never left hers. The missile's path steadied across the main display, clinging to the corridor she had forced it into. Success on paper, but no one celebrated. The room felt less like a mission accomplished and more like a trial. Briggs leaned closer, his words aimed only at her. "You shouldn't exist. Sentinel crest was dissolved. If you're standing here, someone lied to me." Finally spoke, soft, barely more than breath. Not lied, forgotten. The single word rippled through him. His expression fractured, suspicion colliding with something else, memory, maybe even guilt. Before he could speak, alarm shrieked. Unauthorized access. Code spilled across telemetry screens, red text biting into clean columns. "Intrusion detected," a young operator cried out. "External source piggybacking through the downlink." Chaos erupted. Voices clashed, orders collided. The major barked for resets, but panic drowned his authority. "Scan the code." Elegant, malicious, sliding in disguised as routine packets. Her breath quickened. If it rooted deep enough, the missile could be stolen midair. "They're tunneling through the handshake," she snapped. "If they overwrite the correction, it won't stay in corridor." The director spun on her. "How do you know that?" Briggs answered for her. His voice was grim, because she wrote it. The room froze. Eyes widened. Operators stared as if seeing her for the first time. The private whispered, awe breaking through fear. "Then she's the only one who can stop it." Briggs didn't hesitate. "Do it." For the first time that day, authority gave her permission. Her hand slammed back to the console. Keys rattled. Screens flooded with hex dumps raw. She typed in patterns too quick for anyone else to follow. The hostile stream adapted, twisting, striking at her counters. The missile's trace wobbled, gasps rolling through the room. His pulse pounded, but her fingers never slowed. She dug into buried code she had sworn never to touch again. A subroutine locked behind warnings, written for emergencies like this. The system resisted, blared irreversible. She pressed past. The missile's path buckled, then steadied. The hostile stream snapped away from the main feed, severed. The room erupted, shouts, relief, awe. Some clapped shoulders, some stared at her like she was both salvation and threat. Leaned back, chest heaving. Her hands trembled faintly, but her eyes remained steady. Briggs's voice cut through the noise, hard as steel. "Without her, we would lost control. Understand what that means." No one answered. He turned to her, voice lower, roughened. "You've been hiding in plain sight. That ends now." Lips parted, weary but unflinching. "I didn't ask to be exposed." Nevertheless, Briggs nodded toward the captain's phone, still in hand. The world just saw proof. The captain paled, lowering the device. Exhaled a long, steadying breath, then whispered to herself, "Then I'll have to finish what I started before someone else does it for me." Above them, the missile's roar faded into the desert sky. Inside, the weight of secrets pressed heavier than the heat outside. And for the first time in years, felt the shadows she had lived in burning away. What kind of silence was this, relief or dread? The missile's path held steady now, its arc sliding along the corridor she had forced back into place. Operators leaned away from their consoles, sweat drying on their foreheads, some daring to exchange quiet words of relief. But no one looked her way with certainty. Respect flickered in their eyes, yes, but suspicion lingered too. Sat still, the glow of the console painting her face pale green. Her pulse hadn't slowed. Victory didn't feel like victory. Not when the hostile code still haunted her thoughts. It had been too precise, too familiar. Colonel Briggs remained behind her, immovable, his arms folded. His presence filled the room heavier than any alarm. His gaze had seen what the others could not ignore, the badge at her collar, the insignia that should have been ash years ago. The director tried to force normalcy, clinging to procedure as though it could mend the fracture. Range reports vehicle stable, continuing profile, mission designated successful pending re-entry. No, Briggs's voice cut across the room. This mission was compromised. The words landed like stone. Every operator stiffened. The director blinked, his lips moving soundlessly before he stammered, "Colonel, the vehicle was nearly stolen mid-flight." Briggs's jaw tightened. "Whoever penetrated our systems did so with knowledge far beyond what you've prepared for. And she," his finger pointed to without turning his head, "was the only one who recognized it in time." The lieutenant shifted uneasily, his earlier grin vanished. "Sir, she acted without clearance." "She saved the test." Briggs snapped the words. No hesitation. The room fell silent again. His fingers curled against her knees. She didn't want the defense. She didn't want the spotlight. Every success dragged her further into exposure, the very thing she had hidden from for years. Briggs leaned down, close enough that his breath stirred the loose strands of her hair. His words were pitched for her alone. "We're not finished here. You and I will talk away from this crowd." She gave a single nod, calm on the outside, though her chest ached with the weight of inevitability. The guards stepped forward, no longer to restrain but to escort. Their grips were firm but lacked hostility now. Respect had begun to replace suspicion, at least in part. The lieutenant's disappointment was almost visible, his petty desire for her humiliation slipping further from his grasp. As they moved into the corridor, the air grew cooler, the echo of their boots a steady rhythm against polished concrete. Fluorescent lights buzzed above, throwing shadows long across the sterile walls. Briggs walked beside her, steps deliberate, measured. His voice broke the silence halfway down the passage. "That emblem, why do you still carry it?" She kept her eyes forward. "Because forgetting it doesn't erase what was built under its banner." He studied her profile, features carved by restraint. "Sentinel crest was terminated after Caldera. I signed the burial myself. No survivors were listed." "I was never on the list." Her voice was quiet, steady. "Someone needed a scapegoat. I was convenient." His expression didn't change, but the silence that followed was louder than any argument. They reached a reinforced door, heavy with locks. Briggs keyed it open himself, ushering her into a smaller chamber lined with soundproofing panels, a conference room stripped for secrecy. He closed the door behind them with deliberate force. "Sit," he ordered. She remained standing. "Ask, and I'll answer what I can." Briggs regarded her for a long moment, eyes narrowing as if searching for fractures in her composure. Finally, he spoke. "That incursion, was it coincidence, or were they aiming for you?" The question struck deeper than she expected. Her breath came slow, measured. "The exploit was tailored for the original protocol. Few could craft it without studying our architecture closely. That narrows suspects." "Name them." Her throat tightened. "I can't. Too many fragments of crest scattered after Caldera. Some went private, others buried in archives. Whoever resurfaced now, they've had years to sharpen their tools." Briggs paced the room, hands clasped behind his back, boots clicking softly against steel flooring. "And you? You've been hiding among test crews, hoping no one would notice." "I wasn't hiding," she lifted her chin. "I was working quietly." Because silence is safer than proving what you know when no one wants to hear it. Her eyes flicked to his. Until today, until your officers mocked the wrong person. For the first time his lips twitched, though not in humor. You've made my situation difficult. If I shield you, I invite questions from above. If I expose you, I risk destroying the only chance to understand what's hunting us. Before she could respond, the intercom crackled, a voice strained with panic. Colonel, intrusion renewed, not through the downlink this time. They're in our command net. Briggs didn't hesitate. He yanked the door open, followed at his heels. Back in the control room, chaos bloomed like fire. Consoles flickered with static, error codes bleeding across once stable displays. Operators hammered keys in desperation, the director shouting for resets that only spread the corruption further. The private at telemetry shouted louder, panic cracking his voice. They're overriding our boards. Scanned the room once and understood. This was no test, no probe. It was assault. Someone out there wanted the facility blind, paralyzed. Isolate uplinks, Briggs barked. It's spreading too fast, a technician cried. Root process compromised. Shoved past him to the guidance console. Her fingers flew, pulling logs straight from memory buffers before the corruption swallowed them. The smell of ozone thickened as systems strained under the intrusion. The code was familiar, too familiar. Crest fingerprints twisted into something darker. Whoever attacked them wasn't stealing. They were repurposing. The director tried to drag her back. She'll crash the network. Briggs shoved him aside with a glare sharp enough to wound. Let her work. The intrusion surged like a storm through dry grass. Invoked a buried safeguard she had written long ago, a watchdog meant for emergencies. The entire room went black. Screens died, lights flickered out. For 3 seconds the only sound was breathing. Then systems rebooted. One by one displays blinked to life. This time clean, the hostile stream severed. Gasps and cheers burst in the dark, some clutching shoulders, some just staring at her as though she were both alien and necessary. Lean back, drained but steady. You're safe for now, but they'll try again, stronger. Briggs stepped forward, his face set in hard lines. His voice carried pride but also dread. You just proved Sentinel Crest never really died. The question is, what else did you bring back with you? Held his gaze silent. Around them, the room buzzed with confusion. Whispers kept low, but between her and Briggs stretched a silence heavier than steel. At last he spoke quietly. From this moment, you're no longer background staff. You're part of my detail, and until I decide otherwise, no one outside this room knows the truth. Inclined her head. She had traded shadows for exposure, anonymity for responsibility. The badge at her collar no longer hid in secret. It blazed beneath the fluorescent light like a warning. And somewhere beyond Granite Flats, whoever had tried to seize their missile now knew exactly who had stood in their way. How long could silence hold before it broke into panic again? The control room buzzed like a wounded hive. Screens had stabilized, systems recovered, but no one trusted the calm. Every operator glanced twice at their data, hands hovering near resets as if expecting another strike. The missile still tracked across sky, its telemetry whispering steady, but the real battle wasn't above them anymore. It was inside the wires, buried in streams of code like a parasite waiting for its next host. Sat at her console, shoulders rigid, eyes scanning raw feeds that most of the room didn't understand. The badge at her collar gleamed now in plain sight. No use hiding. The weight of exposure pressed heavy, but running wasn't an option anymore. Not after what they had just seen. Colonel Briggs stood behind her, arms folded, eyes never leaving her station. His presence drew a circle of silence around them, officers afraid to interrupt, technicians whispering in corners. Respect and suspicion mixed in their stares. Finally Briggs spoke, voice low enough that only she could hear. Whoever hit us knew your architecture. That wasn't random. That was someone who wanted you to feel their reach. Her hands paused above the keys. Then they know I'm still alive. And that changes everything, he said. The director, desperate to reclaim authority, raised his voice. Colonel, with all due respect, this test is still classified under my command. I'll file my report to. Briggs turned slowly, eyes narrowing. Your report won't matter if we're breached again. And if you haven't realized by now, she's the only reason this test didn't become a funeral. The director's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. The room knew where power had shifted. Wanted no part in their politics. Her focus stayed on the patterns crawling across her display. The hostile code had retreated but not vanished. She traced its residue like footprints in sand. Too clean, too deliberate. Whoever had written it had left marks meant to be found. A message, she whispered under her breath, almost involuntarily. They're baiting me. Briggs caught it. Into what? Her lips pressed thin. Into following. The idea gnawed at her. They wanted her chasing the code, unraveling threads that might lead straight into a trap. But the alternative, waiting, was worse. If they had penetrated once, they could again. And next time, maybe not against a test vehicle. Colonel, she said softly, this won't stop here. Whoever they are, they'll strike again. Harder, unless we find them first. Briggs studied her face, reading the conviction there. Finally, he nodded once. Then we hunt. The word landed heavy. Hunt. Swallowed, memories burning at the edge of thought. Sentinel Crest had hunted once too. Not enemies of state, not foreign infiltrators. Sometimes people like her. Ghosts who knew too much, who survived when they shouldn't. She pushed the memory down. Focus on now. Where? Briggs asked. She tapped keys, pulling raw packets she had trapped in buffers before the blackout. Hex symbols spilled across the screen, meaningless to most, but to her they whispered with intent. Routing paths, handshakes, echoes. They tunneled through uplink mirrors, masked as weather packets. But here, she highlighted a line, the signature repeated, sloppy or deliberate. Either way, it traces back. Back to what? Her voice dropped. An old relay, one Crest built before Caldera. It should been dismantled years ago. Briggs stiffened. Location. She pulled coordinates, mapped them against terrain. The screen painted a barren expanse, salt flats scattered with rusting towers, abandoned on paper, alive in practice. The private who had hovered earlier whispered, awe threading his voice. So they're using our own skeletons against us. Closed her eyes briefly. Not skeletons, shadows. The room was silent again, waiting for Briggs. He didn't hesitate. We deploy. The director sputtered. Deploy? This is still a test facility. Then it just became more than that, Briggs snapped. His gaze flicked back to, you're coming with me. Her stomach knotted. She had spent years burying Crest, piece by piece, refusing to stand in its light again. And now Briggs was pulling her straight back into it. Still, she nodded. She had no choice, not anymore. Within the hour, a convoy rolled out from the base, tires grinding against cracked asphalt, dust rising in sheets. The desert stretched endless, flat as eternity, the horizon shimmering under the weight of heat. Inside, one of the armored trucks sat across from Briggs, silence taut between them. He broke it first. Caldera. Everyone said Crest died there. Fire, collapse, nothing left, but you survived. She kept her gaze fixed out the window. Survival isn't the same as living. He studied her. Why didn't you come forward? Her fingers brushed the edge of her badge, the steel cool against skin. Because survival carried blame, and no one wanted truth when a clean ending was easier. Briggs didn't press. His silence wasn't agreement, but it wasn't dismissal either. The convoy slowed as the flats came into view, towers leaning like bones, metal corroded by time and wind. They rose out of the salt like monuments to abandonment. The soldiers moved cautiously, weapons ready though no enemy showed themselves. Heat waves distorted, every shimmer a phantom. stepped out onto the cracked earth, the air thick with dust and silence. She scanned the towers, eyes narrowing. Memories flickered, nights she had stood beneath these same frames when Crest had thrived in secrecy. She had walked these paths before, under orders she hadn't understood, building systems she hadn't known would outlive her. Now those ghosts called her back. Briggs joined her side. "Recognize it?" "Yes," she whispered, "too well." They entered the nearest tower, the soldiers fanning out, clearing each floor though nothing stirred but echoes. The air smelled of rust and old circuitry. Deep inside found the node. Half buried beneath sand, wires still alive with faint hums. She knelt, brushing grit away with trembling fingers. "It's not abandoned," she murmured. "It's waiting." Briggs crouched beside her, studying the faint pulse. "They're using it as a mirror." "No," she said softly, her chest tightening. "They're using it as a door." She tapped the console. A feed sprang to life, raw streams pouring through, and in the chaos of numbers she saw it again, the signature mocking her, this time clearer. Her breath hitched, recognition carved through her like ice. This wasn't random code. This was Crest's own design, modified, sharpened. But not by an outsider. By someone who had once sat beside her. She staggered back, the salt air burning her throat. "It's not just them, it's one of us." Briggs's eyes narrowed. "Who?" Her voice shook. "Someone who should died at Caldera." The desert stretched silent around them, the towers creaking in the heat. Somewhere out there, in the shadow of salt and fire, a ghost of Crest still walked. And they had just declared themselves. How could a ruin still breathe with so much intent? The towers stood like broken fingers clawing at the sky, their shadows thin against the salt. The air hummed faintly, not with wind, but with current. Old systems stirred awake by someone who knew exactly which bones to rattle. Felt the pulse in her teeth, each vibration a memory she wished had stayed buried. Briggs crouched beside the buried node, watching her closely. "You said this was one of yours." Her throat felt dry. "Not mine alone. Crest built redundancies into every project, shadow networks. We thought we controlled them, but—" She shook her head, fingers brushing the corroded steel. "Someone carried the keys out of Caldera. Someone like you." The words cut sharper than accusation. They carried recognition. Rose slowly, brushing salt from her hands. "There were 5 of us with full access. 4 died in the collapse." Her voice tightened. "Or so I was told." Briggs's eyes narrowed. "And you think one lived?" "I don't think." She stared at the tower, its lattice rattling faintly under the weight of wind. "I know." The soldiers spread out, scanning horizons through scopes, but the flats were empty, heat shimmering like false lakes. A silence that hid too much. The private, nervous but eager, muttered, "Sir, what if it's a trap?" Briggs didn't flinch. "It is." That truth settled over them heavy as armor. The only question now was whose trap, and for whom. Inside the gutted tower, the command feed still pulsed across dead monitors. Linked her portable rig, screens flickering alive with streams of data. The signature she had chased danced across them, looping deliberately, taunting. "They know we're here," she murmured. The code shifted suddenly, words forming in crude ASCII. "Welcome back, Sentinel." Her chest constricted. Briggs read over her shoulder, his jaw tightening. "They know you by name." "Not just name." His voice was quiet, weighted with memory. "That was my call sign." The soldiers shifted uncomfortably, glancing between her and the glowing text. The feed blinked again. "You left me in the fire." Her breath faltered. She hadn't heard that voice in years, but the words carried its echo, sharp, cold, betrayed. Briggs's gaze bore into her. "Who?" She swallowed, throat raw. "He was Crest's systems architect. He designed the skeleton. If anyone could have survived Caldera's collapse through the network," she broke off, bile rising, "it would be him." Briggs processed the name with soldier's discipline, filing it as target and threat in one. If he lived, why wait until now? The feed answered for her, another burst of text clawing across the monitor. You hid in SHADOWS. I built an empire. Stomach turned cold. The soldiers whispered among themselves, nervous energy rippling like static. An empire, what did that mean? Briggs silenced them with a glance. What kind of empire does a ghost build out here? She stared at the screen, fingers trembling slightly above the keys. Not out here, through here. The skeleton wasn't just towers, it was gateways, mirrors strung across continents. Crest wanted to test them for rapid relays, resilient under attack, but in the wrong hands. Her voice faltered. She remembered long nights building, arguments with about ethics, about what kind of power they were unleashing. He had always smiled that thin smile, the one that said power is purpose. In the wrong hands, it was never just mirrors. It was control. The feed blinked again. The world will hear MY signal before they hear your warnings. The text scrolled faster, code burying words beneath layers of interference. Her rig struggled to keep pace, fans whining. Briggs leaned closer. Translate. They're broadcasting, said, horror in her voice. Not just to us, to anyone listening, a show of strength, a declaration. The tower groaned as if echoing the thought, vibrations coursing down its frame. Somewhere above, rusted panels shuddered loose, clattering against salt. The soldiers snapped rifles skyward, nerves taut. Ignored them. Her focus stayed on the code, eyes darting as she typed responses, probing for weaknesses. But the stream wasn't defensive. It was proud, arrogant, a man not afraid of being found. She froze as a new line seared across her screen. I'll let you catch MERA, just to prove you can't hold me. The breath left her lungs. Her name, not her call sign, not her title, her name. Briggs read it too. He's baiting you. Her voice was flat. He always did. The rig buzzed with sudden overload, code flooding the screen faster than she could read. Heat poured off its casing, acrid smell of burning plastic filling the air. She yanked cables free, slamming the power down. The feed died with a hiss. Silence rushed back, broken only by the desert wind. Briggs straightened slowly. He's watching us, maybe closer than we think. Scanned the horizon again, heat shimmering like smoke. Her pulse raced. Had been more than a colleague, more than a rival. He had been the one person in Crest who understood the weight of their work, who looked at her not as subordinate but equal. And he had chosen fire over restraint. Briggs spoke softly, but his words carried steel. This is just your past anymore. If he has what you say, he can reach any system, any weapon, any government. Pressed her lips together, fighting the tremor in her hands. Then we can't wait for him to come to us. We have to cut him out before his empire grows. Briggs gave a single nod. Agreed, but we do this by my terms, with control, no improvisation like today. Her eyes flicked to him. Control didn't stop Caldera from burning. His jaw tightened, maybe because people like him had too much of it. Their stares locked, two philosophies colliding in silence. Soldiers fidgeted nearby, unsure if they were watching allies or adversaries. Finally, Briggs turned away, scanning the salt horizon. We'll return to base, gather intel. This place is compromised. Staying here only feeds him what he wants. Hesitated, torn between fear of leaving the tower alive and dread of lingering in its shadow. She touched the corroded console once more, a farewell or a warning, then followed him back into the heat. The convoy engines roared, dust plumes curling behind them as they departed. Sat again across from Briggs, the air thick with unspoken truths. He broke silence first. This, you knew him well. Her chest tightened, well enough to know he doesn't bluff. Briggs's eyes narrowed. Then what he just promised isn't threat, it's schedule. She didn't answer, couldn't, because she knew he was right. Her gaze drifted to the horizon, endless salt and sky. Somewhere out there was alive, feeding on the skeletons they had left behind. And now he wanted her chasing him, stepping willingly into his labyrinth. For the first time since Caldera, felt the weight of unfinished war pressing against her chest. And for the first time, she wasn't sure if she wanted to run from it or toward it. How quickly could safety turn into siege? The convoy rumbled back across the flats, engines growling against silence. Dust curled into the evening air, light fading into bruised shades of orange. Sat rigid in her seat, staring past Briggs at the dying horizon. She had touched ghosts today, but ghosts had touched back. At the base perimeter, the gates yawned open, soldiers waving them through, faces taut with questions they weren't allowed to ask. Floodlights snapped on, carving hard lines across the compound. Briggs didn't slow. Orders flew through his headset, clipped and precise, his voice carrying a steel edge that cut through hesitation. Seal external links. Isolate critical systems. I want redundancy on every line. Climbed down from the truck, boots crunching gravel. The air smelled of heat and iron. She could feel it already, the change. A facility once sure of its walls now coiled like prey waiting for the strike it knew was coming. Inside the command center, the hum was sharper, more frantic. Operators moved with tension, voices clipped, eyes darting to her badge whenever they thought she wouldn't notice. She ignored them, sat at the console, fingers trembling until they touched keys, then steady as if the machine lent her its calm. Briggs loomed behind her again, not intrusive but constant. She almost wished he'd leave. His presence was gravity, heavy and undeniable. "Will he hit tonight?" Briggs asked. Yes, his voice was quiet. He doesn't bluff. As if summoned by her words, alarms shrieked. Red washed the walls, monitors flashing with intrusion alerts. Not subtle this time, not elegant. An assault, raw and unrelenting, slamming into every firewall like a hammer against glass. Operators shouted, external floods across all bands. Packets multiplying like they're alive. We can't isolate, they're already inside. Briggs barked, lockdown procedures now. The director paled, fumbling at his console. His earlier arrogance was gone, replaced by raw fear. His hands flew. The intrusion poured across her displays, more feral than the probing attack before. This was not bait. This was invasion. Code scrawled across her screen, taunting between the chaos. Hello, MERA. Still CHOSING their side. Her stomach twisted. She typed back, fingers slamming keys. Stop this. The reply came instantly. I stopped waiting for YOU years ago. Briggs leaned close, reading, his jaw set. He's targeting you. No, whispered, heart racing. He's targeting trust. He wants you to doubt me. As if on cue, systems flickered. Power grids staggered, backup relays kicking in with jarring delay. Doors clanged as magnetic locks failed, then reset. Somewhere above, sirens screamed. A soldier burst into the room. Colonel, drones on approach. 6 contacts, unknown signatures. Froze, he's syncing physical with digital. Briggs's voice snapped like a whip. Scramble intercepts now. The base shook faintly as defense batteries roared to life, missiles streaking skyward. Through the command center glass, streaks of light split the twilight. Explosions cracked against the horizon, fire blossoming where drones fell. But some slipped through, flashes streaking closer. Alarms deepened. Impact tremors rolled through the floor. Lights flickered again. His message blinked bold across her screen. How many will you let die to prove you're not me? His chest constricted. She slammed the keyboard, diverting feeds, tracing the path of his intrusion. Each thread led to another, deeper, like veins branching into a heart she couldn't quite reach. Briggs watched her with hard eyes. Can you stop him? Yes, her voice cracked, then steadied, but not clean. Meaning? I'll have to use Crest protocols. Ones I swore I'd never touch again. If I do, I'll expose everything, to him, to you, to anyone listening. The room went still around them, chaos muted by her words. Operators hesitated, glancing at Briggs. The decision wasn't theirs. Briggs didn't blink. Do it. Her fingers shook once, then steadied. She pulled open the buried menu, its black screen staring back at her like a confession. Commands she had written years ago rose from the dark. She typed, each keystroke a fracture in the wall she had built inside herself. Crest's old defenses came alive, aggressive, predatory. Firewalls didn't block, they hunted. Routines didn't isolate, they consumed. The network surged with life not seen since Caldera. The intrusion faltered. Code adapted, twisted, retaliated. Two old architects locked across the wires again, ghosts dragging their creations out of fire. Her display flashed with his words. There you are, I knew the fire kill you. Her breath caught, she typed back, you should have stayed buried. We were born in the fire, MERA. You just pretend you weren't. The words sliced deep. She remembered Caldera, the walls shaking, systems collapsing, screams swallowed by static. She had run from those flames, lived with their ash in her lungs. He had embraced them. Her hands blurred, countering his strikes, routing his floods into traps. The network screamed under their duel, screens flickering with static, sparks spitting from consoles. Soldiers shielded their eyes, some crossing themselves unconsciously. Briggs never moved. His voice stayed steady behind her. Hold the line. She nearly smiled. A soldier's order for a war no one else could see. Minutes dragged into eternity, and then sudden stillness. The intrusion cut. Her screen cleared. Only one line remained, pulsing faintly. Next time I don't test, I take. The feed died. The room sagged with relief. Operators slumped back, sweat dripping. The director wiped his forehead, eyes hollow. Briggs placed a hand on her chair, grounding her. We survived. Exhaled, chest tight, hands trembling now that the fight was over. She turned slowly, eyes meeting his. For tonight. He nodded once, no triumph, just. The base echoed with distant fires, interceptors circling overhead, the smell of scorched dust drifting in through ventilation. Stared at her blank console, heart aching. She had exposed herself, dragged Crest's ghosts into light again, and had answered with certainty. This was only the beginning. For the first time in years, she felt what she had once buried, fear not of dying, but of living through what was coming. When did safety stop meaning walls? The base still smoked from drone wreckage, its fences twisted, searchlights swinging wide arcs into the night. Soldiers moved like shadows, faces drawn, eyes burning with the weight of battles fought too close to home. Inside the command center, the air stank of ozone and fear. Screens buzzed faintly, blank as if too exhausted to glow. Sat slumped against her console, chest tight, hands trembling though she tried to hide it. Hours had passed since the attack ebbed, but his last words still pulsed in her memory. Next time I don't test, I take. Colonel Briggs hadn't left her side. He stood now with his arms crossed, profile sharp against the flickering light. His silence was heavier than orders. Finally, he broke it. We can't wait for him to hit again. If we do, he'll choose the battlefield. We'll lose. His eyes lifted, ringed with fatigue. And if we go to him, we walk into his labyrinth. Briggs leaned forward, voice low, steel under gravel. You know his labyrinth. You built it together. That makes you the only one who can drag us out of it alive. Her chest ached. She wanted to deny it, to run back into the shadows she had lived in for years. But shadows didn't protect anyone anymore. The director, pale and trembling, tried to intervene. Colonel, if we lose her, if she defects. Briggs turned on him like a blade unsheathed. She's the reason you're breathing. Don't mistake distrust for caution. She's not your liability, she's your shield. The words landed heavy. Lowered her gaze, guilt prickling against the pride those words should have sparked. She wasn't a shield, Not anymore. Not after Caldera. Briggs noticed. His voice softened. Tell me what happened there, the truth, no more fragments. Her breath caught. The room seemed smaller, walls leaning closer. She had carried silence like armor for years. Speaking it now would break her, but the time for silence had passed. Her voice was quiet, almost swallowed by the hum of broken circuits. Caldera wasn't an accident, it was sabotage. Crest was testing deep net protocols, firewalls strong enough to cage whole arsenals. But he wanted more. He believed containment was weakness. He rewrote the framework in secret, turned defense into weapon. She swallowed hard, memories cutting sharper than glass. When it went live, the system didn't shield, it consumed. Anything connected fed it, feeds, comms, even life support. We tried to shut it down, but by then fire was everywhere. I thought I killed it. Thought I killed him too. Her voice broke, but I didn't, he survived. The fire made him stronger. Silence pressed hard. Operators stared, some in awe, some in horror. The private who had shadowed her earlier whispered, "You saved lives that day." Shook her head slowly. "I left ghosts in my wake, and one of them followed me." Briggs's eyes narrowed, not in judgment, in calculation. Now he's built an empire out of the ashes. Yes, her voice trembled, and I don't know if I can face him again. Briggs leaned closer, voice steady. You don't have to know, you just have to try. The intercom blared before she could answer. Colonel, perimeter breach, multiple signals inbound. The room erupted. Soldiers rushed to positions, claxons wailing, red light flooding every corner. Snapped upright, adrenaline shoving fear aside. The monitors lit with incoming streams. Drones again, heavier, faster, not testing this time. Assault. Briggs barked orders, voice cutting through chaos. All batteries online. Ground units to sectors 2 and 4. Fingers slammed her console. Streams crawled across her display, signals wrapping the base like chains. He's not just sending machines. He's in the grid. He'll choke defenses before they fire. Stop him. Briggs's order was simple, absolute. Her hands blurred. Code rose like a tide. This wasn't just intrusion, it was siege. Power grids dimmed, radars staggered. Out the glass, she saw interceptors failing to lift, engines coughing as commands twisted. Her breath caught. He's shutting us down. The room darkened, red emergency lights bleeding across faces. Alarms wailed weaker, systems strangled. Briggs grabbed her shoulder, grounding her. Options. She closed her eyes for one heartbeat, then opened them. One, but it's not defense. What is it? Traceback. I let him in deeper. Follow his signal where he doesn't expect. It means surrendering more of our systems, maybe the whole base, just long enough to see his heart. The director shouted, panicked, "That's suicide." Briggs's voice cut through, calm and hard. Do it. His chest tightened. Her fingers hovered above the keys. Once I start, there's no pulling back. Briggs met her eyes. Then don't pull back. The weight of his trust hit her like a strike. She nodded once, breath sharp, and began. She opened gateways deliberately, tearing holes in their own defenses. The intrusion surged, code pouring in like a flood. Systems fell dark one by one, communications, defense arrays, even door controls. The base shuddered under drone strikes, metal groaning under impact. But beneath the chaos, her rig traced the threads, a labyrinth of mirrors. She chased them, one after another, faster than she had since Crest's prime. Sweat dripped down her temple, her heart beat louder than the klaxons. And then there, a slip, a corner too sharp, a signal too direct. Coordinates. Her breath caught. She had him. The feed blinked with sudden words. Clever MERA, but not enough. The screens died, black. For one heartbeat, the room was silent. Then the ground shook, a deep rolling thunder that wasn't drones, something larger, something heavier. Operators screamed, incoming warheads. His chest seized, wasn't bluffing. He had escalated beyond tests, beyond drones. He was coming to erase them. Briggs grabbed her arm, pulling her to her feet. His voice was gravel, steady even now. "You got his location." Her hand tightened around her rig, trembling. "Yes." "Then we move." His eyes cut to the soldiers, to the chaos, to the fear. "This base is already lost, but the war is not yet." The private who had followed her earlier shouted above the alarms, "Sir, where do we go?" Briggs didn't hesitate. He looked at. She felt the weight of every gaze, every life waiting on her answer. Her throat tightened. Her chest ached. She whispered, voice steady despite the storm inside her, "We go to him." The room stilled. The words landed heavier than any order. Outside, the night burned with streaks of fire. Inside, stepped into the truth she had fled for years. No more hiding, no more shadows. The final confrontation had begun. Why did it feel like she was walking into her own grave? The convoy tore across the desert in darkness, engines muted, headlights blacked out. Only the stars lit the salt flats, vast and endless. Sat in the back of the lead vehicle, her portable rig balanced on her knees, fingers moving in silence. Every keystroke felt heavier now, as though she was carving not just code but her fate. Colonel Briggs sat across from her, helmet loose in his hands, eyes locked on her with the same weight he had carried since the first missile test. Not suspicion, not exactly trust, something heavier, something that said he had already decided to follow her where this road ended, whether it killed them or not. "You traced him here?" Briggs asked quietly, voice low so the others wouldn't hear. Nodded, her throat tight. The coordinates buried in his flood, a signal he thought I couldn't see. Old Crest facility, buried in the cliffs. Briggs's jaw flexed, "And that's where he'll wait for you." Her lips parted but no words came, because that was the truth. Wasn't luring armies, he was luring her. The truck jolted over rough terrain, soldiers gripping rifles. The private who had hovered near her since the first test, she'd learned, sat at her side, watching her with eyes too young for the war burning around them. "Ma'am," he whispered, why's he after you?" Her chest tightened. She could lie, say it was Crest, say it was coincidence, but lies had carried her too long already. She met his gaze, voice soft. "Because once I was the only person who believed in him." Swallowed hard, turning away. The convoy slowed as cliffs rose from the desert, jagged teeth against the starlight. Shadows stretched deep, valleys swallowing the trucks whole. The engines cut. Silence rushed in, thick and heavy. Briggs stood, motioning soldiers forward. His tone was sharp, clipped. "Perimeter, quiet advance. No comms unless contact." Stepped out last. The air was cold here, a bite of stone instead of the open desert's heat. She pulled her jacket, but it wasn't the cold that made her shiver. It was memory. She had walked into facilities like this before. Crest's hidden bones, places that didn't exist on maps, where ethics bent under the weight of ambition. Briggs fell in step beside her. His voice was low. "When we find him, what then?" She didn't answer right away. The truth was sharp, two-edged. She wanted to stop him. Needed to, but another part of her, a buried part, still remembered nights working side by side, building systems line by line, believing they were building shields, not swords. Finally, she whispered, "Then I face what I left behind." The path narrowed into a cavern mouth, reinforced steel doors hanging open, rusted but alive with faint hums. Had left them ajar deliberately, an invitation. The soldiers fanned out, weapons raised. Briggs glanced at, "You first." She stepped inside. The air was stale, humming faintly with power. Old Crest panels lined the walls, their logos faded but unmistakable. Lights flickered weakly, powered by systems too stubborn to die. And then a voice filled the chamber, calm, smooth. "Welcome home." Her chest clenched. It wasn't a recording, it was live. Briggs signaled his men, rifles tracking every shadow. "Show yourself." Laughter rolled from the walls, echoed by hidden speakers. Always the soldier, Briggs, still barking orders in rooms you don't understand. His hands trembled on her rig. She typed, pinging local nodes. The system responded instantly, alive, hostile, but not hiding. He wanted to be seen. She said softly, her voice echoed into the dark, "Why?" A pause, then the voice came closer, sharper. "Because we built the world's most powerful mirror and they used it as a wall. They buried Crest in ash, smothered its fire, but I kept it alive. I gave it purpose. And now it's bigger than any flag, any nation." "You turned it into a weapon," she whispered. "No," he snapped. "They did the moment they feared it. I turned it into freedom." Briggs's jaw tightened. Freedom doesn't come with drones tearing bases apart. Laughed again, bitter. "You don't see it, soldier. You're still chained to ranks and flags, but she knows, she always knew." The lights flickered. A shape stepped from the shadows. Older, leaner, by fire, but unmistakable. His eyes burned with the same brilliance she remembered, the brilliance that once inspired, now corrupted into something harder. Soldiers tensed, rifles snapping up. Briggs lifted a hand. "Hold." Ignored them, his gaze locked on. "You cut me out at Caldera, left me to burn, and still I survived. Doesn't that prove what we built can't be killed?" Her throat tightened. "It proves you chose fire over people." His eyes softened, almost pleading. "People are fragile, systems endure. That's why I built this, an empire of signals, a network no government can silence. You can't bury it, you can't bury me." Briggs stepped forward, voice sharp. "Then we dismantle it, starting now." Smirked, "Try." The walls came alive. Screens lit with streams of code, feeds pouring in from drones, satellites, even civilian networks. A living web wrapped around them, pulsing with control. Rig buzzed in her hands, streams colliding with her systems. He wasn't hiding anymore. He was daring her. Briggs barked, "End this." Her chest pounded. She dropped to her knees, rig on the floor, fingers flying. Code rose like waves, his against hers, colliding in sparks of light across the screens. Every strike felt personal, every counter an echo of nights they'd spent building together. His voice wove through the chaos, calm, relentless. "You don't have to fight me, join me. We can finish what Crest began. Shields stronger than fire, walls higher than nations. No more orders from men like him." His gaze flicked to Briggs with contempt. His breath hitched, the offer stabbed deep, because once she had wanted that too. Her fingers faltered. Briggs's voice cut through, steady and raw. "Remember who you are. You've already chosen. Every time you stood up when they mocked you, every time you pulled us back from fire, that wasn't him. That was you." Her eyes burned. Memories clashed, Caldera's flames, smile, the laughter of officers who thought her invisible, Briggs's hand steadying her shoulder. Her chest heaved. She typed harder. "No," she whispered, voice breaking. "I won't join you, not again." Her rig screamed under the strain, fans whining, sparks spitting. She dug into the deepest layer, Crest's original root protocols, the ones only she had ever touched. She opened them wide. The system froze, for a heartbeat silence. His eyes widened. "You wouldn't." Her voice cut him off, soft but final. "Humility belongs to the operator." She pressed the final key. The network imploded. Streams collapsed inward, consuming themselves. Screens shattered with static. Lights flickered out. Staggered fury twisting his face. "No." The floor shook as generators died. Systems fell silent. And then gunfire. Lunged, soldiers firing, Briggs pulling back. The cavern filled with smoke, shouts, echoes of struggle. His chest pounded as Briggs dragged her clear, her rig clutched to her chest. When the smoke cleared, was gone. The chamber lay in ruin, systems fried, consoles dead. Only silence remained, heavy and final. The soldiers swept the shadows but knew he had escaped, not destroyed, not yet. Briggs stood beside her, breathing hard, eyes steady. "You cut him out." Her throat ached, for now, but he's still out there. He nodded. "Then we'll be ready." She stared at the broken screens, at the echoes of fire and shadow. Part of her ached with failure, part with relief. She had faced him. She had chosen. Outside, dawn painted the cliffs pale gold. The soldiers filed out, weary but alive. Briggs paused at the cavern mouth, turning back to her. "You know what this means." She nodded. "Crest isn't buried anymore." His voice was softer now, almost human. "Then we build something better from its ashes." She looked at him, at the horizon glowing brighter, at the weight of what lay ahead. And for the first time in years, she felt not hidden, not broken, but steady. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And with that, she walked out into the light.